Hello, welcome into the IDP Guys Waiver Wire Show. It is week 15. Crazy. We have done 14 of these so far. Hope everyone is doing all right. We're here to get you ready for your week 15 playoff chances. Hopefully, we were able to help you get there to begin with and answer any questions you might have, as well as providing the names to help you on offense as well as defense. Already have a few questions in the chat from our weekly listener. Love you, Willpower. But you guys keep on dropping them in there throughout the show. We'll try to get to them after we go through defense, and after we get through offense. How are you doing today, Axton? My intro is all over the place right now. I'm Michael Sicoli, for anyone wondering, and I'm joined here by Axton Harding, my co-host.
Hey, I'm not doing too bad. Another day, another dollar, staying busy. Ready to get these fantasy playoffs underway. So not doing too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I can't complain too much. The heat is out in my house. I will tell you that. A little bit short on that, so it's a little bit cold up here in Connecticut. Any of my Connecticut listeners would know that there is snow on the ground, and where snow comes, there tends to be cold, and that's what I'm dealing with. But hey, what's not been cold has been this show. I think we had a pretty good week last week. We're gonna get into that real soon. But first, I want to give a shout out, of course, to the IDP guys we're watching right now, and the giveaway that we're currently doing. So if you go to idpguys.org/contest, you can see how to be entered into a free giveaway for a signed Nakobe Dean jersey. Now, he might not be doing much this year, but as we saw last week in a quarter of play against the Giants, the future is bright for Nakobe Dean, former Georgia Bulldog. So be sure to enter yourself into that giveaway. Again, idpguys.org/contest. The link is also in the description below. So be sure to check that out, as well as just checking out the Twitter and subscribing to the YouTube at IDP Guys for both, because that's where all the amazing content goes. Anyway, let's get into this week for waiver wire pickups. Last week, we're going to start with defensive linemen. Last week, we had
Oh, not sure quite what happened with Mike there, but he was just going to go over what the names we had last week.
not what just happened there. It appears the StreamYard wanted nothing to do with me, kicked me off. But either way, like you were wonderfully saying right there, actually, I appreciate you picking it up for me. Um, Last week we had the defensive lineman, and we had George Karlaftis, who logged in yet another sack, a pass defense, and 3 tackles. So solid play right there. Very happy with that. Quiddy Pay we've brought up as a stash. He was on bye, so we will see how he does next week. And I'm very happy with my dart throw in Bruce Irvin landing on the dartboard. 6 tackles, 3 of which were solo. He got his sack. He had another QB hit and a TFL to boot. So for someone like Bruce Irvin, that was one of his better games of the season. I'm happy we were able to get on the right track with that one. So this week, we have 3 lovely names, and I'll start off with this one of the New York Giants. That is Azeez Ojulari. So hasn't been it's been a mixed season for Azeez because he's been incredibly productive while he's out there. However, the problem is that he hasn't been. He's only played 4 games this year, but he does have 4 sacks in those 4 games. He got another one this past week. Looked good while doing it. He's always been a bit of an inconsistent player, but to see some consistency in the second season is something we like to see. He sees Washington this coming week, which ranks 8th in sacks allowed. He got a sack 2 weeks ago, and he forced a fumble 2 weeks ago against the Commanders. So this is a very much do or die game for the New York Giants. I think Azeez Ojulari has to show up in a very big way. At the very least, he needs to get a sack, and he was able to do so without playing the entire game because of how the Giants were shellacked last week. So listen, I'm willing to ride the hot hand yet again for Azeez. That's my call right here.
Hey, in 3 out of 4 games this year, he's got a sack. Half of those 4 games, he's also forced a fumble. So he seems to be pretty efficient with those with the snaps he does get when he's in there playing, and especially with the do or die week coming up. He's going to be looking to make make plays. So I definitely like that pick. The second name we had up here was Chandler Jones. He seemed to return from his 12 weeks of just half sacks. Couldn't quite continue the streak he had started earlier in the year. So just in the last couple of weeks, he's got 4 sacks total. Those came in great matchups. Fortunately, that continues going into this next week in the first week of your fantasy playoffs. So this is going to be a pretty scrumptious matchup for Chandler Jones up against New England. And just this last week, kind of goes to show after Mac Jones got sacked how many times?
I think it was 2 or 3 times, but he was under pressure the entire night. It was pretty ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah, this he just doesn't. And this offense really flows best through the run, and it seems like when defenses are pressuring Mac Jones after on the drop back, seems like he really can't handle that pressure. So they ended up getting it done, albeit due to a Kyler Murray injury early on. But this ought to be a good game for Chandler Jones to keep continue his streak.
I think we got a common theme here with riding the hot hands of Chandler Jones, Zizo Jalari. And we also have a nice little revenge narrative. Chandler Jones, former Patriot for a short bit there. So hey, little add that up in there. But we'll throw out our third name. This one going into a place even colder than where I am right now, I'm sure. And that would be DJ Wonnum. I hope I'm saying that pronounced correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. Of the Minnesota Vikings. So he sees Indianapolis this week, and that's truly what I'm looking for. He's definitely been in a rut. I won't lie with that. He hasn't been that good for fantasy. It's because he only has a sack. He hasn't had a sack since week 9. But he's still getting QB hits in those games, and that to me tells me that he's still getting to the quarterback. In Indianapolis, if you're getting QB hits in prior games, I think you're going to get home against Indianapolis. They allow the most amount of sacks in the league. Matt Ryan can't handle the blitz. The offensive tackles are a turnstile, and it's not quite as bad as it was in the first 5 weeks of the season, but it's still pretty bad. Still one of the better matchups for defensive ends like DJ Wonnum. And listen, I'm willing to take the chance here. He also tends to get 3 to 4 tackles. That it's a nice little boost in case if he does get the sack I'm looking for. You add 3 to 4 tackles on top of that in case of a TFL. All of a sudden, you have a much bigger day. I do think I think he has a good week this week, and the rotation that Minnesota has at their edge rushers is incredibly effective, and it needs to be with the secondary being as bad as it is.
Yeah, and on top of all of that, his snap counts kind of fluctuated throughout the year, but at least the last couple of weeks, he's really seen 40 plus snaps. So he's getting in there, getting the snaps, he's getting back to the quarterback. It's just a good matchup that you just hope maybe he can finish one of those plays or a couple of them and get that big play, get a sack, tackle for a loss, forced fumble, and anything like that. He's getting back there, so I'd be a good matchup for him to take advantage of.
Yeah, and he's averaging almost a pressure a game, so he is getting right in the face right there. He's just not quite finishing the play sometimes. And he's not missing many tackles as well. He's only missing 6.5% of his tackles, which, that's what I would hope for from an edge rushing player, but it's also nice to see that being confirmed. So those are our defensive lineman pickups for this week. Again, that would be Azeez Ojulari of the Giants, Chandler Jones of the Las Vegas Raiders, and DJ Wonnum of the Minnesota Vikings. And another name I want to throw out there, you could count as a linebacker or defensive end. Hopefully you count it as a defensive end in your scoring and league formats. Joey Bosa, I think, will be nearing a return relatively soon. Chargers trying to make that playoff push and are making that playoff push. Big win over Miami this past week. I have a lot of interest in Joey Bosa. Definitely more so where I can play him as defensive lineman. So I would want to be picking him up, looking out for him, because once he gets going, he is not going to be available for you. And he could be a league winner in the last 2 weeks of the season. So just a name to keep in mind, especially if he starts getting back to practice. Let's move on to the linebackers. So last week, not as good. But I mean, a bit of a mixed bag. I think we had our bright spots, we had our low spots. Start off with Tony Fields. I was trying to call the Browns linebackers, and that's a much harder thing than it should be this year, predicting a Browns linebacker split. So that is didn't work out. Tony Fields was 4th in that rotation. Played only 11 snaps, didn't really get it done. But at the same time, JOK did get injured this past week. Expected to miss significant time. Could end his season this late into the year. So maybe, but he was still 4th in that rotation. So Probably, if you need to drop somebody, you could definitely drop him. I might be interested to just hold him out one more week and see. Otherwise, it could be Jordan Kunziak as that other guy, and one other name that we're gonna bring up real short. Um, but we also had the Tennessee Titans one to break down. That was a difficult one because Joe Scober got the run last week when Dylan Cole obviously had his role, and remind me, who am I even talking about? David Long. David Long
Mhm.
left the game. Joe Scober filled in. But we sat here on this show last week and said Monty Rice was going to be that guy. Monty Rice was that guy. 12 tackles, was number one, number two, and he outsnapped Joe Scober and had a TFL on top of that. It was a very good day for Monty Rice. You could consider him a pickup in this bunch as well. A very important pickup, honestly. So
Scober got dropped after the game. I'm not sure if you saw that, so that kind
I
of
did not.
solidifies a little bit there.
I did not see that, but that doesn't surprise me at all because he's not that good. But Monty Rice at least is going to be that guy going forward, and I think I don't know if I speak for you as well, Axton, but he would probably be our number one name on this bunch today. We're not talking about him because we talked about him last week, but Monty Rice of the Tennessee Titans still very important to pick up. And the other name we threw out there was Chad Muma, who did not come back from his injury. The ankle injury picked up at the end of that Week 13 game. So he did not play this past week. Hopefully he's back on the field. Going to be a little bit hard to trust him in the first game back, especially since Devin Lloyd stepped out. That game. They obviously do want Devin Lloyd to be that guy, given the first round investment they gave him. But let's move on to this week. This week we have Deion Jones. I think it's a pretty safe one to say. Deion Jones, Browns linebacker, has been up and down the rotation all year long, but with JOK out, with Jacob Phillips out, with Anthony Walker out, and with JOK out, and with I might have said that already twice, and some other name, and Sion Takitaki out. Eventually, Deion Jones is going to get the run, and he did get the run this past week. He played 89% of snaps. That's the role that I can't imagine, as unpredictable as this group has been, I can't imagine that they just get rid of him, even though he hasn't been that good. They're just running out of bodies. Deion Jones seems like the last guy standing, and he's going to have a high usage role for a role that is productive, albeit very unpredictable.
Yeah, unfortunately, just that process of elimination now at this point, they don't have many other players or names to go in there and compete. And so far, when Dion's gotten the snaps, he's had a decent floor, no less than 5 tackles when he gets, 30 plus snaps. And he's thrown in an 8 tackle game, a 7 tackle game last week, and got an interception. So I think he'll definitely be more than serviceable moving forward. This, like you said, this linebacking core in Cleveland is pretty valuable.
And you
If
have
you can
Baltimore,
actually get a handle on it.
And you have Baltimore on deck with a possible Anthony Gordon starting under center and a heavy rushing attack with, J.K. Dobbins coming back this past week, Gus Edwards, and again, Anthony Gordon, which means they're going to try to run the ball, which could shape up well for the tackle floor of Deion Jones.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Said it best. Next name we got on here is Josh. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yush? Is that
Uche.
how it's
Josh
pronounced?
Uche.
Uche.
Josh Uche.
Okay.
I live with
All right.
Patriot fans up here, so I hear his name quite often.
There you go. Yeah. Obviously for New England Patriots, last 3 weeks, he's really hasn't. He's kind of had an up and down role throughout the season, but starting week 12, not even starting then. As of the last 7
weeks,
weeks,
really, or
even this last 7 weeks, he started getting sacks, and when he started getting sacks, he's now starting to get more snaps, and it's really resulting in quite a run he's been on since week 8. Just the last 3 weeks, for example, he's got 6 sacks, forced fumble, and on top of all that, 13 tackles. So that snap count is increasing, so he's definitely going to be in there and be more involved. They like to rotate their linebacker really all over the defense, but if they can find somebody that can stick, they will stick with him. So Josh Uche, I would ride the wave, until it ends, till there's nothing left. This next week wouldn't quite be a favorable matchup had Kyler Murray been in there, but unfortunately he did go down with the non-contact ACL tear last night. So Colt McCoy will be heading the quarterback position for Arizona, and this ought to be a decent little matchup for Josh Uche to continue this nice little streak he's got going.
I was having a conversation with Patriot fans last night about what makes this season a success. Like what would have to happen, and they pessimistically said pretty much nothing would have to happen. They'd have to win playoff games and things like that. But Josh Uche and Matt Judon and this defensive line and this defensive secondary with the young corners they have been so impressive this year. And Uche's the stat that I saw on that broadcast last night, he's led the league in pressures this year in terms of pressure rate. And again, he's not playing that much, but when he's out there, he's getting to the quarterback, and we've seen that through the stats and through the sacks. Like you said, saw the jump in snaps, played a season high 64% last night against Arizona. He has 5 tackles or more in 3 of his last 4 games. 3 of his last 5 games. He did have a dud against the Jets, which I'm sure left a bad taste in some people's mouths. But I do think the snaps have really been there now for Uche, and I do trust him. And I think we said I think I wrote something wrong in the on the doc for you to mention Kyler Murray there. I definitely did, but the Raiders are on deck, which is a little bit of a scary matchup because it's a scary matchup because of how much they run the ball up the middle and how Derek Carr gets the ball out of his hands. And honestly, press protection hasn't been that bad in Vegas, but I do think I want to ride the hot hand, like you said, Axton, and I do think the the matchup after that, Cincinnati, is a much better one for them to correct me if I'm wrong if it was Cincinnati after it is. And that's a much better matchup for defensive ends like Uche to really step up. And while we're talking about him as a linebacker, I'd obviously much prefer to play him as defensive lineman if your format allows it. I'm willing to take the chance as a linebacker. I think he's shown enough upside for me to swing for the fences. And I normally like a higher tackle floor, but ride it, man. He's just been that productive.
Yeah. Another one we just wanted to mention before we move on to defensive backs was Jalen Smith. He peaked out a little bit today or this last week and just kind of reminded us that he is worthy of consideration for a spot on your roster. I think this last week he got 7 tackles.
Yep, I believe that's the number.
That's correct. Oh, 9 tackles.
9. Was it 7 solo? It was something
7 solo tackles.
7
yeah,
solo.
So 7 solo tackles, 9 tackles total, flirting with that double-digit number. If he's available and you need a linebacker, definitely somebody that's going to be playing a lot of snaps and proven productive. So if he's out there, don't be afraid to snatch him up.
Yep, completely agree. I think it's someone that I want to bring up because we brought him up in the show numerous times. And sometimes, I think one of the times we did, he had a dud the week after. And this is par for the course. Also, Michael McFadden also got hurt in this past game. Hopefully he's okay, but that does greatly increase the floor for Jalen Smith because Michael McFadden was a pretty solid player that was kind of rising as a rookie in that system. But Jalen Smith is now that guy and will have to be going forward. But let's move on to defensive backs. Last week, we had, last week we brought up Derek Forrest, who was on bye this week, so we'll see. Brought up Fabian Moreau, who was having a decent game. He got, I think, 2 of his 4 solo tackles. He came early in the game, and then just the Eagles did whatever they wanted. They just scored every touchdown. Or sorry, not the Eagles. Remind me, who the hell did they just play? I am all over the place this morning without my heat. I will tell you that. But either way, Fabian Moreau was just kind of played off the field, and that's kind of how it played out for him. So a little bit disappointing on that end. But we also had Marcus Williams as someone that we brought up of someone he's coming off the IR. It might have been mentioned to us in the comments, so shout out to you, chat. And a reminder, keep on dropping questions in the chat. We'll answer defensive ones right after these defensive back questions. Keep dropping them in. But also Marcus Williams, who returned to a 3 tackle, 2 solo, not great, but he did have that interception and a pass defense against Mitchell Trubisky, and the eyesore that he is. And that's Trubisky, not Marcus Williams. And we also talked about Marcus Jones not buying into him, which was the right call because he was too good in pass defense, and he just didn't allow completed passes. But I don't think he was registering pass defenses last night either. He did have one screen, but I think the injuries to the secondary kind of forced him into a more every down role, which took him away from more offensive opportunities like we might have saw 2 weeks ago. So either way, let's move on to this week. You want to kick us off? We got 3 names I think we're all very happy about.
Yeah, absolutely. Another Cleveland defender in John Johnson. He seems to kind of pick up a little bit of slack now that they're kind of really hurting in the linebacker aspect. Just this last week, he got 7 tackles, 6 of which were solo. So that's encouraging that he's still maintaining somewhat of a good or decent tackle floor. This next week, who do they play? They play Baltimore.
Baltimore.
So that's a
Lovely
great,
matchup.
great matchup for a potentially a mistake-prone quarter or a newer quarterback, fresh quarterback that doesn't have a lot of playing time. Could lend well to a lot of mistakes in the passing game should Lamar Jackson not go down or not play this next week. So John Johnson would be the first one here on our list as far as pickups for this week.
And Baltimore's been allowing a top five in points allowed to the safety position this year, and that includes Lamar Jackson, includes Tyler Huntley, and now we add Anthony Gordon into this mix. One name is not like the other, and I think it's only going to be good things for John Johnson. So I definitely like that name. Another one I like a lot, Marcus May. So maybe this is the New York in me, and I'm not a Jet fan by any means, but Marcus May has a role in the box with the New Orleans Saints, and it's good. It's a good role. He's been good for them this year when he plays. The problem is he just hasn't really done a lot of it. But if people remember, before this past bye week, he did have 11 tackles. He had a very good game, and now he faces Atlanta, which is already a good matchup for the safety position. But then you factor in Desmond Ritter's first start, which could mean turnovers. At the very least, it means a scrambling quarterback that could open up tackles for a safety, which I think will happen just as much, if not more, than Marcus Mariota did. And I mean, listen, he's got matchups like Cleveland after that, which we just talked about. We talked on the reverse end of that Baltimore skit. It's also a good matchup for safeties. And then he also has Philly, which allows a top 3 to the safety this year because of how many deep plays they get. So I really like Marcus May kind of as a rest of the year potential league winner. Although defensive back is obviously very streamable week to week. We throw out these names and hopefully they're hitting. But I do think Marcus May is a guy that you can play this week and potentially play beyond.
Well said. Well said. Last name we had on this list for the week is pretty injury dependent. He's been a replacement. This is Andrew Wingard for Jacksonville. Andre Cisco's missed the last couple of weeks, and Wingard has since taken over that role and seen a significant amount of snaps. I'm at like 70 some this last week, and he's seen a hefty portion, if not all, of the snaps in Cisco's absence. In that time, he's also got 13 solo tackles and 3 assisted tackles, so 16 total tackles in the last couple of weeks, which is very encouraging for a defensive back, no less. In that time, he's also snagged a hit on a quarterback, a tackle for a loss, and this last week, all in this last week, and an interception, excuse me, on top of it all. So just kind of keep an eye on Andre Cisco's status this week. It seems like, from what I read, that they're going to try to put him back into practice this week. So they're hopeful that he can make it. But at this point, I'm not entirely sure if they would rush him back just because of how great Wingard is playing. They could probably buy an extra week just to get him fully healthy. So should Cisco not go this week, I would recommend an Andrew Wingard pickup in replacement if you haven't already.
ESPN reported yesterday that Cisco is day-to-day this week. He did return for a couple limited practices last week. So we'll see. Potentially that could mean a return for Dallas. But either way, Dallas is a great matchup for safeties as well. So hopefully we get to see. I think either way, one of these guys is going to be a very productive name. Let's get into the defensive questions that we already have plenty in the chat that I'm very excited to get through. But keep on dropping them in if you have any. I know we have plenty of listeners. We always get these questions, and we're here to help you guys win your leagues. The best way to do it is to provide you guys advice that is very custom to the situations you're in. So keep on dropping them in there. We're going to start it off with willpower. Got this question in before the show even started because this guy is built different, I think is the term that we like to use. But he's got defensive lineman predicament Axton. Should he replace Danielle Hunter or Dexter Lawrence or both for any of these choices? That would be DeForest Buckner, Yannick Ngakoue, Josh Sweat, Gregory Rousseau, Jalen Phillips, Jonathan Simmons, Azeez Ojulari, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, or Chase Young. That's a lot of names we just went through there. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the question being brought up right now. If you're obviously on podcast, I hope you're sticking with us through that one. I would not. I know Dexter Lawrence disappointed this past week, and that was honestly something that we kind of saw coming because it was a very tough matchup in terms of points allowed to the not very tough, but it was a tougher matchup for Philadelphia. And Miles Sanders did what he wanted, but I do think Washington is better at points allowed, as well as Minnesota the next week of what they've not been able to do with Dalvin Cook this year. So I'm happy to hold on to Dexter Lawrence. Danielle Hunter is the only one I'm looking at to possibly replace. But if I like one of them this week, I feel like I would also like Danielle Hunter this week. Right?
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. If I was looking to drop one, it might be Hunter. I don't know. There's quite a few decent names up there. Buckner's a good tackle floor.
Payne has been excellent this year,
and Payne has been great. Jalen Phillips is coming off a great game.
That's my answer. I would replace Neil Hunter with Deron Payne. That would be I'd play Dexter Lawrence, Deron Payne against each other this week in a must-win game for both those guys.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. Deron Payne's just been on a tear this year.
Yeah, Deron. If we could bring up guys like Deron Payne on this show, our job would be much easier. So he also says he has a bye this. Oh, so he's looking. Oh, I wish I saw this. He's looking for matchups in week 16 and 17. Either way, I held Deron Payne through a bye in one of my leagues because he has San Fran in week 16 and Cleveland in week 17, with the two most run-heavy teams. So Deron Payne is still my answer there. I don't know if that changes it for Dexter Lawrence for me. I got to quickly check his matchups 2 weeks from now, which still is Minnesota and still is Indianapolis. I'm still willing to ride with those two names, which is still my answer.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Awesome. He did say he was thinking of one of the Washington guys, which Montez Sweat is in there as well, or maybe Josh Sweat, but he's afraid of Philadelphia resting people week 17. Sorry for the question, Knock. We appreciate the long questions. We always love seeing them, Will. But I think that is our answers, would be Deron Payne and Dexter Lawrence. And he is sympathizing with the cold over here. It's negative 20 degrees Celsius where you are. Shovel for an hour. I'm sorry, man, but listen, I like to think it builds character, or maybe it makes you stronger. Maybe it makes these warm. I hope you had some hot cocoa. That's what I'm feeling. I don't know. But he also said this. He said Harrison Smith was dropped in one of his leagues. He's thinking about picking him up and dropping Hufanga. What do you think about that, Axton?
Harrison Smith was dropped. Yeah, honestly, I don't think I would mind that. If I know that is going to be playing for me the rest of the season. Hufanga's just kind of been too up and down. Harrison Smith's been pretty reliable about all season long. So I'm not sure to what extent the severity of his injury is.
Harrison Smith. Yes. I was looking up myself. So he has his neck injury flared up last week is the word that was used. He was able to get a practice in later in the week. I'm hoping, me personally, that he'll be back this week. And they do have something to play for. Obviously, Phil coming off a bad loss and also, trying to get back at that number one seed, albeit a very low chance, and also trying to maintain control of this division among a surging Lions team. And just in the NFC, which is very close right now. So I do think if he's healthy, he will be out there, and Indianapolis is a great matchup for it. He didn't practice on Wednesday. He practiced limited in Thursday, Friday. That makes me feel like he'll be back this week. So I would do that. I would pick him up and drop Hufanga.
Absolutely, I'm here for it. I mean, he's pretty well had like almost a 6 tackle floor minimum for a defensive back, which is excellent on top of 5 interceptions this season. So absolutely willing to drop Hufanga for Harrison Smith.
Well, now we're going to have to hold that question back because we have another question from him about Marcus Jones. So the guy we just talked about, we're not talking about normal leagues, but in leagues where you are rewarding points like it is here for kick and punt return yards, would we take a flyer with him? I really need to know the conversion because in my league, where there is pretty much a point for every 10 yard, this might be even more. Marcus Jones has 24 and 32 points in the last 2 weeks. He had 17 2 weeks ago, and this is solely based on return yards. And I think when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, we were saying that I'm only interested in him if he rewards return yards. I said that a couple weeks ago now. So I think it's a very no floor play, but it's something that has a high ceiling, and I'm willing to play him over. Harrison Smith is much smarter, much safer. I think I'd probably play Harrison Smith because of the world I can get 1 point for 10 return yards. He's averaging about 60 to 70 a game for reference, Axton. So that's a nice 7-point floor, but sometimes he doesn't even get a tackle. Last night he was really thrust into it. This is my answer, actually. Yes, if Jack Jones misses. If Jack Jones' injury is serious, then yes, because that's all Marcus Jones play in every down role. He had 8 tackles last night. If Jack Jones is not playing, Marcus Jones should be in. Almost regardless of return yards, but definitely with the return yards. He probably be my number one pickup in your league with return yards if Jack Jones misses.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in agreement. If Jack Jones's absence was a big factor in his just major increase in snaps and playing time on defense this week, I think I'm definitely there. That 6 or 7 point floor for just return yards in general is pretty enticing, especially if he's going to be getting a lot of snaps. Now, typically, Jack Jones is in there. You really can't rely on on Marcus Jones to be playing a significant amount of defensive snaps. So in that case, I would go Harrison Smith. But yeah, I'm in agreement. Keep an eye on Jack Jones.
Yeah, and he did suffer a bone bruise, which he said he's expecting to play in week 15, but Jacoby Myers said the same thing this past week. He did not play. So we'll have to monitor that closely, but Marcus Jones would be probably a smash play if Jack Jones misses. A question from Dom Kwan. Nice to see a new face here. Nice to have you on the stream. So he said he picked up Reed Blankenship week 14. He went down. Now he needs to pick up a new safety. He's stuck between Cameron Curl, Marcus May, Jeremy Chin, and the Honey Badger, who I miss from KC because it's just not the same in New Orleans. But I think the answer for me, without knowing, it's Cam Curl. I mean, Cam Curl has been an absolute stud, and honestly, I would have been playing him over Blankenship. So this might even be, as disappointing and sad as it may be, might be a bit of a stroke for good luck if Cam Curl is out there to pick him up. But if you don't get him on waivers, because I'm sure he was dropped because of the bye, not because he hasn't been good. If you don't end up getting him, I would probably lean May as my number 2, Chin as my 3, Honey Badger 4. Right?
Yep, I was in agreement. He's pretty well got it ordered in the way that I would that I'd go for pickups. Curl's undoubted of heads above the rest in my opinion there. But again, you don't get him. Again, the order you have it laid out there is pretty well how I would go about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a tier jump, and he was only dropped, I'm sure, because of the bye week and defensive back being the position that it is. So we're going to move on to the offensive side of the ball. Keep on dropping questions in the chat. We're going to answer another set at the end of this of whatever you guys need to know. Let's move on to the quarterback position. That last week, Jared Goff, he just rode the hot hand again, boomed again, 330 and 3. And then I was like, let's play with Tyler Huntley, and that didn't work out exactly. But not a great day, and then he got injured, so it didn't exactly get better. But we're going to try to go 100% instead of just 50% this week. So the first name I'll throw out here is Ryan Tannehill, somebody that has been incredibly underrated this year, in my opinion. I don't think we've given Ryan Tannehill enough credit for dealing with the adversity that he's dealt with this year. He hasn't had Traylon Burks for most of it. He lost A.J. Brown this offseason. He is that. That's that. That is not good. He's lost members of his offensive line. He hasn't had good weapons. They weren't playing Chig. We're going to talk about in a little bit, Okonkwo for a while. So I think Ryan Tannehill is finally clicking right now. He has a concourse stepping up. He has Trillenbergs hopefully coming back. He sees the Chargers, which is despite them playing incredibly well on defense this past week against Miami, I do think they're still a beatable unit. I'm not going to buy into them being all of a sudden fixed on defense. And the game script should be favorable because the Chargers have figured out their offense. They have a healthy team now, and mostly, rest in peace, Rashawn Slater. And they're going to put up points. I think they're going to have to play catch up with Ryan Tannehill, and that's going to be a nice thing to tag on there.
But Ryan Tannehill's low-key been a decent quarterback to stream about all year long, especially in favorable matchups. But for our next pick, Mike put up here to decide between Mike White and Taylor Heineke. For me, I think this kind of depends on the severity of Mike White's injuries. If it didn't really sound great whenever I was kind of reading up on it, potential internal injuries after just coming out, being evaluated, going in, and just a repetitive process. But kudos to him for being a freaking powerhouse and playing through all that. So I think regardless for me, I'm probably going to go with Taylor Heineke just because they played the Giants right before the bye. Taylor Heineke threw for by far the most amount of times, 41 times, which is 10 more than any other game this season. And arguably overall, I would say is one of his better games this season because he also threw for his second highest amount of yards and 275 yards and 2 touchdowns before the bye. It just seems like he was getting it going, and that was even at New York. This next week they're playing in Washington. I would imagine that this Washington offense, if Taylor Heineke is playing, I did see that Carson Wentz was activated, but I'm pretty sure they've indicated
he is, but he is the backup,
right? Yeah. So yeah, I would imagine that they're gonna stick to what worked last time. Maybe make some minor tweaks. I'm sure New York's probably preparing for that, but I would imagine he's going to be busy. He's going to be throwing the ball.
Yeah, 275-2 the last time he played the Giants. I do think that's where I lean here, despite my heart wanting to go with Mike White. I threw down both these names because of the matchups. I think Heineke showed that he can expose this Giants team, and if you're noticing in the fantasy weeks, tough matchup, slightly less tough, slightly tough, not that good, bit to average. That's kind of the way the Giants defense has been trending since they suffered all the injuries they've had in the secondary this year. So I do think Taylor Heineke will be my pick of the two. I think he's a capable streamer this week. I want to say Mike White because of Detroit, but I do think Detroit has played better of late. Mike White with the injuries, he is going to play. I feel confident he'll play. It's really a pain thing that he's dealing with. But I'm still going to lean with Taylor Heineke. Or as Yahoo called it, or NBC Sports Edge called it 2 weeks ago, Taylor Teineke, because of how the game ended last time, which is pain. And I apologize to inflicting that on these lovely listeners who have been providing some amazing viewership all year long. But that is our quarterback picks. We're going to move on to the running backs now. And again, I'll say it always, a reminder that you should be checking out the IDP Guys giveaway that's currently in the description below at idpguys.org/contest to sign up for a free N'Kobe Jean signed jersey, as well as a few other cool things. So just be able to check out that link, see how to put yourself in the running for that. And keep on dropping questions in the chat. We're going to keep on going through. Running backs. Last week, we decided mid-show, really, that we were going to just so hands-off on the Seattle running backs. And that worked out. Travis Homer, Tony Jones, we didn't care. They were all bad, and that's how it turned out. We talked about stashing James Cook, hopefully even maybe playing him, but he kind of just played a bit role this past week, so hopefully you might have picked him up, stashed him. I'm willing to have him on my bench, not in my starting lineup. And we talked about Cam Akers, and man, I don't even remember which side we ended up on in terms of we thought he might have been able to get it done that past week against that Raiders front, and he did get it done, bailed out by a last-minute touchdown. I guess. And that's what Cam Akers is. I'm not going to expect that going forward. You play him in matchups where he could get a touchdown, and that was one of them last week against the Raiders. Not exactly sure I want to count on it going forward. But let's get into the names that are going to help you this week. And there's really one tremendous one that I think we need to talk about. That's Kevin Harris, New England running back. Stevenson went down last night, and it was a very sad moment. And hopefully he's okay. He was trying to go back in. They taped up the ankle, then he came back out. But Kevin Harris stepped up in lieu, and he played great. And I'm willing to even take a shot on Pierre Strong here, given how they rotate their backs. But I think Kevin Harris is somebody that is going to potentially win their leagues this year if it's an extended absence. I don't think Damian Harris is back this week. I have a hard time believing Stevenson's going to be able to shake off this ankle injury in 1 week. At the very least, you're going to have a top 20 play at running back in Kevin Harris this next coming week. And that's incredibly valuable. So if you're still holding fab at this point of the year and you need a running back, you need any play, I'm willing to spend almost all of it on Kevin Harris this week. Is that crazy, Axton? Tell me if that's crazy.
No, honestly, it's not. He was one of the guys that I particularly like coming out of the combine. He's a massive human being, and he just profiled as just a bruiser back. So I was really excited to see where he would go. Unfortunately, stuck behind a committee of backups behind Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. But should both of those guys be out this week, I would imagine he's going to take a bulk of the workload. Pierre Strong he actually was very efficient with all of his touches. I think he almost averaged 15 plus yards per play he
had that like 35-yard rush that definitely boosted on a short sample. But yeah, they did whatever they want on the ground last night, honestly.
And Kevin Harris, he's just like all of these New England backs. He's just going to keep pounding it, and he's going to be one that can tumble for a few extra yards on every play. So definitely an interesting play now that he could possibly get some opportunity in the next week or two.
And we have the Raiders on too. We just talked about you could have played Cam Akers last week. No, you get Kevin Harris to do that Patriots front, which has been able to run the ball all year. So Kevin Harris, I think we definitely like. Another name I want to throw out there, we've thrown it out before, but I'm doing this because he is still 44% unrostered in Yahoo leagues. Zonovan Bam Knight, the man of the man. I am falling in love with Bam Knight, and it's a shame because when Breece Hall comes back, this will all mean nothing. But he's a good football player. He's looked really good in these 3 weeks that he's filled in. He led the team in carries this past week with 17. He had 71 yards on those touches. He also caught a couple on top of that. I am in on Bam Knight. He does have a good matchup against Detroit, which have been surprisingly stingy against the run. I don't care. Bam Knight. Bam, 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 bam. And he's won this job over Michael Carter. Michael Carter is not that good, and he hasn't looked it. James Robinson is dust, unfortunately, ripped to the Achilles, and that has finally come to happen. And Bam Knight is that guy. He has that job. He has the role, and he has 69 yards rushing in each of his 3 games played. So I'm playing him almost rest of the season, and he is probably rostered in your league if people are paying attention. But he's still unrostered in 44% of leagues. So I'm going to say it. He should be rostered. He should be owned. He should be started. So that's what I'm here to say. That is madness to me. That he is,
especially considering the slew of matchups he's got coming up. Detroit didn't really start the season off too well, but their defensive line's been pretty solid as of late. But definitely exploitable. He could, and then after that, he's got Jacksonville and Seattle going up into your fantasy playoff semifinals and the finals. So he's been pretty hot lately. So I would imagine they're going to keep running through him, especially if Mike White's down. They're going to probably run this offense straight through Zonovan Knight. So everything's just going to their passing game's going to flow off of that, and they're just really going to rely on him pretty heavily moving forward. So Zonovan Knight should not be on your waiver wire. If he is, pick him up. I don't care what kind of roster you got. You could likely find a spot for him.
What are we doing, people? He is less owned than Cam Akers. Like, I know Cam Akers has done it for the last 2 weeks, but like, are that many Yahoo leagues checked out? Maybe that's what it is. People that draft from the beginning of the year that didn't pick up, but like, Come
Sounds
on,
about
pay
right.
attention to your leagues, guys. Bam Knight's going to win you guys a league title this year, and he's going to be a very frustrating person to talk about this offseason. When I fall in love with him, can't get him on the field. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Those are our running back pickups. We got another question in the chat there. Thank you, Will. And yes, he does say, smash the like, everybody. That is what we should be doing. Yahoo, YouTube. Hit those likes, subscribe as well, because that is really what we're going for that giveaway. And if you've entered into the giveaway already, make sure you're subscribed, because I'm pretty sure that's a way to do it. But we're going to do that drawing at 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you want your chance to win, fill it up quickly before everyone gets their entries. Just check the link in below. And also hit that like button, subscribe, all that. And we're going to check out all those questions right after wide receivers and tight ends. So keep on dropping them in there. However we can help, we want to. Let's move on to the wide receivers. So last week, DJ Chark. I said I was ready to be burned. He did not burn me. 6 for 7 for 94 and a touchdown. Had that long one, which I immediately thought of this show when it happened. And we talked about, so that was great. On a lesser extent, we talked about how I thought the Titans wide receivers have a better day. Robert Woods had a passable day, 5 for 7 for 49. Not great, but didn't totally sink you. Westbrook-Akeen, very disappointed me. 23 yards, I believe. I needed to get 20 for a parlay and was sweating that way too close. I was just feeling bad about this entire thing. But disappointing.
He did get a touchdown, but
he did get a touchdown, which was a really nice grab.
Thought he would.
Which was a really nice grab, to be honest. But that you don't get extra points for nice grabs. Demarcus Robinson was another meh type of play. 5 for 6 for 52 yards. And Corey Davis left the game with an injury, as well as Mike White getting rocked. The Jets were just off kilter that entire day. So Corey Davis didn't exactly get it done. But we're going to try to go 100% this week. We have 3 names here, one of which is a deep darling for me, but I'll let you take it away. Axton, which one do you want to run through first?
Oh, I'll touch on Elijah Moore. We brought him up a couple of weeks ago, and naturally, the week after, he only caught a third of his targets for, I think, one big play. But this last week, he saw 10 targets, caught 6 of them. So we're trending in the right direction. At least I think it was 3 weeks ago. He caught like 2 of it. He had 2 targets, both of which he caught, 1 for a touchdown. Last week he was 2 for 6 on his catches, and then this week we're now 6 for 10. So definitely getting more involved and becoming more effective in this offense as it just completely unfolds. Detroit presents as a top 5 matchup this next week. So expect him to build off of that 6 reception, 60-yard performance last week. I would imagine Elijah Moore is heavily available in a majority of leagues. So he's definitely worth a spot on your roster.
Yes, sir. I'm going to jump to that deep name right now. So this might be more of a dynasty name. And honestly, the way he's performed is almost a redraft name. I understand if you don't want to trust him this week. And in most leagues, 8-man, 10-man, 12-man even, probably not worrying about this. But if we're talking 14, 16, which I know some of you guys are in those leagues, I do want to cater it all. I think we've kind of focused on more shallow at times or the normal leagues this year. Isaiah Hodgins. I realize I forgot to put the banner up for Elijah Moore right there, but hey, he's hurt me too much. He doesn't deserve a banner right now. But I'm talking about Isaiah Hodgins, and you are forgiven if you don't know who that is. That is the Giants wide receiver who has caught 2 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, 1 in each game. It's the Giants receiver who has 3+ receptions in the 4 straight games that he's played right now. And he's also the guy who has 85% snaps the last 2 weeks. He's the guy that has been on the field. He is also a former Bills player, a former late Bills draft pick of Brian Dable's regime, and I'm blanking on the GM right now, who is also in Buffalo. He has a lot of history with this system. They wanted him to be that. He came over to the Giants. He got his opportunity, and he's performed with it. He's been very good the last few weeks for the Giants. I think he could score again this week against Washington. And Washington's allowed 22 passing touchdowns this year. That's not a ton. It's not a small amount. I do think Hodgins could add to that total this year. So I'm willing to ride the hot hand with Hodgins. It's definitely a dart throw, but it's also something that I'm willing to take a chance on. I'm curious what the kid thinks, Axton. Is he in on Isaiah Hodgins, who I also forgot to put the banner in on?
I like the snap counts. I like the amount of targets he's receiving the last couple of weeks. I'm not entirely sold on the continuation of the streak. This New York Giants passing game has been really wishy-washy all year long. It's really just come down to one guy each week, and it hasn't even been the same guy. So luckily, I think this is probably a rarity of him actually performing for 2 weeks in a row. So should you be desperate, and again, you threw it out as a deep dart throw. So if you're
14
desperate,
to 16
definitely.
teams. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely somebody that could present a lot of upside in potentially a pretty bleak waiver wire, I would imagine, for those deeper leagues.
Yes, sir. We have one other name here. I think it's a guy that is dear to my heart. Yeah, I don't know if he's dear to yours. I feel like he might be dear to yours, Axton.
He is, but he hasn't been one of those guys that I've actually gone out and rostered. I like the idea of him in this offense, and I like him getting Paris Campbell. By the way, I don't know if we mentioned his actual name, but he's just this offense is just too bad for me to be on him, but he does present an interesting play just week to week if you actually need a wide receiver to play, because he has seen 5 targets and a minimum of 5 targets in, let's see, 6 of the last 8 games. So he's definitely getting a decent floor as far as looks go, and he's been pretty efficient. He's really only dropped like 3 targets max in a game, and that was once. Every other game, it's really he only drops maybe 1 or 2 balls that get thrown his way. So I like the upside that he presents, and I like what he can do with the ball. It's just this offense has not really been one that I want to much part of as far as really any receivers go. I like Pittman, but it's just no consistent quarterback play. Just really doesn't sit well with me when I'm going to pick these guys up. I think I've managed to find probably other players I like a little bit better.
See, I'm here to provide some more confidence for people that need to start Paris Campbell this week, and I think they should want to. They're just playing Minnesota, so Minnesota can do one thing, and that's score very well. And that secondary is abysmal. That secondary has a lot of problems in it, outside of Harrison Smith, but he's not even the coverage guy there. He's a thumper. So it's bad. It's a bad team. And when they score, listen, we saw what Detroit did this past week. We had 4 wide receivers that we could have started from Detroit. I'm asking for number 2 right now. And it's Indianapolis, which isn't great. I know that. But since week 6, and that includes a bye week in that span, he's the wide receiver 27. That's a high-end wide receiver 3. He's averaging over 12 fantasy points per game in those leagues. This is PPR I'm talking about. So I think you're going to get a solid flex play with wide receiver 2 upside in Paris Campbell this week in a very great matchup. So I'm in. I'm in on Paris Campbell this week. Now, Chargers and Giants after this, both very unfavorable matchups. Not as in. A little bit more worried about that. But I do think that they're going to have to throw the ball to keep up with Minnesota. Minnesota has a point to prove this week, and I do think that's going to come through Paris Campbell through the air.
And through the last 5 weeks, I just took a look, at least weeks 10 to 14, maybe the last 4 weeks, Minnesota has allowed no less than 22 points a game. So this ought to be a pretty active and high scoring matchup theoretically, if Indianapolis offense can really take advantage of this porous Minnesota defense. So yeah, you've got me. I like Campbell this week. He's definitely has a more than a favorable matchup. So I could get him. I'm on board. I could get on board.
It feels fitting that I should start my year talking about Paris Campbell and almost end my year talking about Paris Campbell. This might be the last time I mention him on the show, given the tough matchups that are coming up, but still someone that I'm interested in of getting me to my title. Jesus Christ. So tight ends. Let's move on to the tight ends for this week. Again, drop some questions in the chat if you do have them. We do want to help you guys out. But the tight ends we're going to talk about last week. Last week we had Trey McBride, which I was very excited about. Thought this would be the breakout. Had some decent usage, got rocked on a hit, but Kyler Murray's injury, I really do think, to a damper on the entire offense, as well as any touchdown upside, which I was really hoping for and you kind of need from a tight end. Cole McCoy was not able to move the ball. Hunter Henry led the team in receiving this past week, was good for, I guess, a tight end 1 performance. He was a tight end 10 with like 70 yards and 3 catches, which gives you a mindset of what this tight end is this year or what that position is. But he was a starter this week, and he was consistently ranked outside of the top 12. So W, I guess, as much as tight ends go. Right? Is that, I don't even know if that's fair to say, but either way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this last week was pretty out there for tight end performances. Evan Ingram had 162 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I think
it
he
was
went
crazy
from
week.
I think it was like the tight end 13 or 14 to the tight end 4 because of this past week. I believe
Sounds
that's
about
the
right.
fact. I don't quote me on it because I could be wrong on like tight end 13, but maybe it was like tight end 11. Either way, that's the jump he made because that's where tight ends are at this year. But we do have a name that I think everyone was excited about last week, and I apologize to you, the listener, for not bringing up last week. It's something I should have been on earlier in the week. But again, it's also why you follow our Twitters, because we do mention these guys throughout the week as things become a little bit more apparent. Chika Okonkwo. This is the rookie tight end of the Tennessee Titans. Again, remarkable that we're talking about, I think, 5 different rookie tight ends at different points this year of what was going to be perceived as a weak tight end class. But listen, when Traylon Burks was out, he saw much higher. He saw his most targets this season with 6. I don't know if Burks is back this past week, so I don't know if we're going to see the same usage. But he's caught 6 balls. He had 45 yards. He had a touchdown, and he had a 2-point conversion on top of that. So he's still not seeing a jump in snaps. So I really do want to set this in the fact that I think we could be in due for somewhat of a disappointment compared to the breakout we saw last week. But when he's out there, he's running routes because Hooper is kind of doing the blocking for the most part. So I am interested in Chika Okonkwo this week. I'm not expecting the top 5 again, but I do think he has a good chance as any to get in the top 12 because he's also a guy that can really stretch the field, which is rare for a tight end. The amount of 30-yard reception that he has as a tight end it has to be top 5 in the position probably this year, and he hasn't even been playing as a starter for all of the year, honestly. So I'm willing to play him this week as a low-end tight end 1.
And that's even with Traylon Burks back, or if
Even
he
with
would
even with I'm willing to play him as a low-end tight end 1.
Yeah.
If Burks misses, I'm willing to play him. I have much higher confidence. I think top 6.
Absolutely. Yeah, the last couple of weeks I think he's gotten. I don't forget if you mentioned a touchdown in both the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
So, really, just any kind of bright side in this Tennessee passing game is something to hold on to. So, I'm getting on board with Okonkwo as well. The next one we've got up here is actually someone we brought up periodically throughout the season. Juwan Johnson, tight end for the New Orleans Saints. He was a top 5 tight end prior to a ghosting game with injury where he's gone down. He's kind of been out for the last couple of weeks or so. But if he comes back this next week, they play the Falcons, which presents as a top 6 matchup for the tight end position. So I think this would be a great opportunity for Juwan to kind of pick up where he left off prior to that injury.
Yeah, I really do think we need to kind of remember what he was, and kind of one stinker plus a bye week and an injury, or not a bye week, an injury and whatever. That kind of caused us to totally forget about how productive he was, and it's fair he hurt you guys if you did play him. But I think it's willing to forgive and forget and play him this week. I don't understand how they went through their bye week and decided that Andy Dalton is still the starter, but hey, it's par for the course with Juwan Johnson. Who can keep it going this week. But let's get into the questions, offense or defense. We have a few in here from some people. We'll start with the offensive one from Blurpy, who I believe we saw last week, so nice to see you again. It goes Travis Etienne, which is heartbreaking that he's in just the talk of this right now, but he's really been bad the last few weeks. Travis Etienne, Zonovan Knight, or Evans, who is that Mike Evans? Might be Mike Evans. Mike Evans has also been incredibly hurtful to our lineups as well, and had 2 touchdowns called back on, or 1 touchdown called back on penalty, another one where Brady just missed him. So believe me, I feel your pain. These are 2 guys I have in a lot of leagues. If I'm picking one, I'm picking Zonovan Knight. I'm picking Zonovan Knight. ETN
That
has
was mine.
Dallas, which I have zero interest in being. If I have to play him, I'll play him. If I can avoid it, I will. And Mike Evans hasn't been trustworthy this year. He hasn't scored since like week 5. So it's on the night. I'm right in the hot hand. I said it before. I'm sticking with it that he's somebody that's going to win people their titles this year, and I think he's already gone on his way to doing so.
Yep, Zonovan was my pick as well. ETN and Evans just really haven't been getting it done lately, and Zonovan has, and really looks like he's going to continue to do so. So I would ride the hot hand here.
He does say his other running backs are Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry. It is a 2-flex league. So he's between those 3 for his second flex. That I think stays with my answer, especially when you have some stable guys. I'm willing to. I mean, I don't see the upside for ETN in this matchup. I don't see the upside for Mike Evans anymore right now. Like, it's just not working. So I think Zonovan Knight has this role. I think they love him in New York, and I think he's shown it. So I'm willing to ride with the volume that I know he will get. And honestly, I do think he'll stay on the field. So that's another side of it. They're using JaMychal Hasty in Jacksonville, which is frustrating as hell. But we have another question from Will Power. He's saying, here's his defensive players. Should he make any changes to this lineup? This is Dexter Lawrence, Danielle Hunter, Jordan Poyer / Kyle Duggar / Hufanga, Sanborn, Mosley, Edwards. I'm not sure who Edwards is there right now. TJ Edwards, Bobby Wagner, Rashawn Evans. Jesus Christ, there's a lot of info. Should he make any changes to this? I don't think so. I think you have a very solid lineup. I think we mentioned the things we would about Hufanga and Daniel Hunter, but I think we like the rest. I mean, Sanborn, Mosley, TJ Edwards, Bobby Wagner, Rashawn Evans. I'm not touching any of those guys. I'm not touching Dexter Lawrence out of my lineups. And I think we touched on all the other guys, right?
Are we supposed to be picking 2 from each and then 2 flex?
He also says Deshaun Elliott. It doesn't say whether we're picking, just saying should we make any changes.
I'm like that lineup.
As do I. I think you probably have 4 linebacker ones there, or 5 linebacker ones there almost. So with Bob Wagner probably the exception. So ride the hot hand, my man. But Bobby does bring this up as well. If ETN gets the high snap share, not doing much to touch. Yeah, I know. 10 for 9 last week, or 9 for 10, whatever it was. It was brutal on the ground, and I mean it was a tough matchup last week. I don't know if it changes this week. But yeah, that's where I come out to with that. And Will ask a very unfortunate question of do we put Shigan over Kittle? So I did the tight end rankings for IDP guys. So I will have this done later tonight. I will have to make these decisions. The short answer is no. Not against Seattle for me. I will trust Kittle against Seattle because Seattle is a gaping seam for the tight end positions, allowing 60 yards per game. And I think Kittle's the guy that will hit the average. I do think he'll hit the average, despite them being a very run-heavy team, despite Brock Purdy being a little bit limiting, I think, to the offense. But I'm willing to play George Kittle this week over Chig.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think Kittle's going to give you a little bit better floor and even just as much, or if not more, upside in a favorable matchup.
Completely agree. All right, so we are on the same page there, and that will be our Week 15 show. Coming in right at the hour mark, pretty much. So thank you guys for tuning. Oh, we got some. Oh, yes.
One more.
Yes, you do.
Facebook one.
Yes, you do. And
we had a question posted on the Facebook group from Eddie House. He has a league where he starts 6 IDP, 2 DLs, 2 linebackers, 2 backs, 2 flex for IDP, and it's IDP 1, 2, 3 big play scoring. So he's got Zaire Franklin and Rashawn Evans in the flex. He's got, for D lineman, he's got Azeez Ojulari, who's on our show. Jalen Phillips had a big week last week.
Yes, he did.
Linebackers, his starting linebackers are Dre Greenlaw, Jordan Brooks. So some solid IDP all the way through. Defensive backs are Talanoa Hufanga and then Jeremy Chin. And Mike and I talked about this one a little bit before, and I think we were both kind of in agreement on everything looks pretty solid here, Eddie. I think the only things maybe we were questioning were Ojulari, who I think we collectively agreed we would start over your. Well, actually, no, with Aiden Hutchinson. It was between him and Aiden Hutchinson. I'm
It
not
was
sure if we.
close.
I
I
think
think
we chose
I still leaned
Ojulari.
Ojulari myself, but it is really close. And
Yeah.
I don't think you're going too wrong either way. I
Yeah.
just think Ojulari might have the he might have a slightly higher. He might have a higher floor, a higher ceiling, than
Words are fun.
than Aiden Hutchinson. Because Hutchinson won't really be getting tackles. He might get you a sack and maybe a TFL. But you might get 5 tackles out of Ojulari and a sack and a TFL. So I do think it's close for both.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to be too far off choosing either one of those guys to start in the DL this position this week. Then the other one that Mike and I agreed could be up for a swap out would be Hufanga, just because of his lack of consistency as of late. We kind of agreed between you got Andre Cisco, Javon Holland, and Grant Delpit to put in there. And granted that Cleveland is going to play Baltimore this coming week. Mike and I think, correct me if I'm wrong or if you've had any change of heart, we're going with Grant Delpit, I think, over Hufanga for this next week.
Yeah, which is a sad thing to say. I mean, Hufanga also has a good matchup against Seattle, and Geno Smith has kind of come back down to form. I'm not looking at Javon Holland yet because he hasn't been able to really do anything more than just tackle, really. That's all he's been doing. So not really that interested in Javon Holland yet, but Delpit has been up and down a little bit, just like Hufanga, but I do think the tackle line will be a little bit higher this week against Baltimore, or this week coming up against. Remind me,
It is Baltimore.
It is Baltimore. I've said so many names today and so many matchups, but yeah, against Baltimore, I just think the ceiling and floor is a little bit higher.
Yep, I agree.
So yeah, that I'm glad you brought that up because again, I would have totally forgot. And thank you, Willpower. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this week of the IDP Guys Waiver Wire Show. I've been one of your hosts, Michael Sicoli. You can follow me on Twitter at Michael__Sicoli, and you can follow Axton at Harding_3. And I say it every week. We try to help you guys in this show, but things always change. Things change throughout the week, which means we have a special guest over here as well. Who's been getting some amazing IDP advice. Feature. That's feature. We should
sucking
be
in all this knowledge.
But we say it every week we try to help you guys on this show, but new information comes out, new people get hurt, new people step up throughout the week. And we're not going to do a show every day. So follow our Twitters. Be sure to getting updated information as well as the IDP guys at IDP Guys. Because that's where all our content eventually goes to. And again, I'll shout out the giveaway that we're currently doing for the Nakobe Dean jersey, as well as a few other amazing things. Go to idpguys.org/contest. It's the link in the description below to check that out. And it's free to sign up, subscribe to the YouTube, and just be an overall baller. Be an IDP guy. I think it's good way to think about it. So thank you guys for tuning in to this week 15 show. We'll be back for week 16. Hopefully your playoffs go well. Hope everything stays healthy, stays safe, and have a good day. Have a good week.